Summertime is heating up at Global Voice Broadcasting. Hot music, hot talk, and hot topics. All day, every day, 24/7. You don't want to miss a minute on Global Voice Broadcasting.
I highly recommend Ms. Hicks. Her books, her CDs are encouraging.
I bought her book, A Hill to Climb. She's a very inspirational speaker.
And I look forward to one day being able to work with her.
Your power lies within you. Let it loose.
Aspiration, inspiration, motivation, edification, determination. These are the keys of life success, brought to you by none other than award-winning author, motivational lecturer, business consultant, and much more as she gets you aimed to your purpose. And now, ladies and gentlemen, young and elder, from Hollywood to the entire world, here is your host of Aim to Purpose, the radio show, Louise Hicks, along with her co-host, yours truly, Kennon Wesley Mason.
They protect us. They defend us. They help us in times of need. But they're being destroyed from within.
Last year saw more Army suicides than any year on record.
Day
Our son was just one of thousands of veterans that this country has lost to suicide.
after day
only to die here at home in their sleep.
after day.
He then used a pistol to take his own life.
There is a hidden enemy at work.
It's got to stop.
And it's hiding in plain sight. The most dangerous enemy is the one you never suspect.
I spent almost 26 years on active duty in the Marine Corps. I retired with the grade of Brigadier General.
I was an Army captain in the aviation branch.
I was a Staff Sergeant E5 in the United States Air Force.
I was in the United States Marine Corps from 2007 to 2011.
Florida Army National Guard.
31st Engineering Battalion.
I was in aviation and military intelligence.
Battlefield intelligence analyst.
I was a U.S. Navy fighter pilot.
Combat medic with an LPN license. So my nomenclature would be a 68 Whiskey Mike 6.
I got out as a sergeant, non-commissioned officer, this past March. I didn't see the emergence of psychiatry in the Army up until I suffered my own injury. And then it was like, it was a flood. It was a flood of doctors, and it was a flood of meds.
There's just as much stress on today's soldier as in the past. Long hours, grueling missions, extended periods away from loved ones. And when mental and emotional problems strike, there's no doubting their reality. A lot of money has been spent trying to handle this problem. The US Pentagon now pays out $2 billion a year on mental health alone. And the Veterans Administration's mental health budget has gone ballistic, shooting up from less than $3 billion in 2007 to nearly $7 billion in 2014. With all this spending, why do things continue to get worse? Because in today's military, once a person is diagnosed with a psychiatric illness, the almost inevitable result is a prescription for a psychiatric drug. And psychiatric drugs are being prescribed a lot.
Yes. Hello, world. How's everybody today? And welcome. I'm Louise Hicks, your host of Aim to Purpose, the radio show.
And I am your co-host, Kennon Mason, and I want to say good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to everyone listening and watching from around the world as we present another special edition of Aim to Purpose, the radio show, as we are going into the military today.
Yes, we are. And you saw that clip at the top of the hour. And our show today is the psychiatric drugging of the military, the hidden enemy.
The hidden enemy, yes.
And we have an in-studio guest with us today.
Very special guest.
Very special guest. The U.S. President of the Citizens Commission on Human Rights, Mr. Bruce Wiseman.
Yes, and he's going to be with us shortly as we bring you this special edition of Aim to Purpose, the radio show. And I am dedicating this show to my brother David Reed, who is having an ongoing battle with psychotropic meds. And I also want to dedicate this to all military representatives all over the world, as I myself know people personally that I grew up with that have either been in the military or are no longer in active duty, and also people that I went to high school with that are also active members in the military as well. We salute all of you for doing what you do. At the same time, this particular subject has to be addressed.
Yes, it really does. And I have a personal interest in this, too. As Ken just said, his brother, who happens to be my son, for those of you who watched our program, and we're just a month into celebrating our annual anniversary, which was last month. We celebrated 1 year of being on the air with Aim to Purpose, the radio show. And I have been struggling with this from a civilian standpoint with my son, David, who has never been in the military because he was diagnosed with a rare cancer at the age of 14 and went on to battle depression and drug addiction due to, a lot of it has to do with the psychotropic drug. And he also inspired this book, my book, A Hill to Climb, A Teenager's Battle with Cancer, Depression, and Drug Addiction, which is told through my eyes as his mother, the perspective of how his battle has been, along with me, dealing with the system, fighting with the system because of the psychotropic drugs that he's been dealing with, being in and out of the hospital. And this has been going on now for 20 years, which inspired me to launch a Go Mental campaign, an initiative that will be going forth soon, hoping one day, we don't know when, but we intend to get to Washington, D.C. to address this psychotropic drugging of the military as well as our civilian people, many who are homeless, the people who protected us and are still protecting us, as you saw at the top of the hour on the show. And this is an American atrocity, and we're here today to shed some light on what is going on, because when I heard about this, being married to two military guys, one now deceased, and hearing that 22 military vets commit suicide daily.
Yes, we have the headline here. This is from CNN.com. Headline: 22 veterans kill themselves every day. It says more than half of 2.6 million veterans from the Iraq and Afghanistan wars struggle with physical and mental health problems stemming from their service. A recent Washington Post and Kaiser Family Foundation poll found whether it's physical and mental health challenges, financial woes, or what some describe as the daunting task of reassimilating to civilian life, the pressure can be overwhelming.
Yes, the pressure is overwhelming, and I can certainly speak and address to it, being married to two military veterans who were in the Vietnam War. Mm-hmm. And it's so many things, I guess. It's what inspired me to start Aim to Purpose, the radio show, because of my life experiences, being that now I've lived on this planet for 64 years. I'm just in awe of some of the things that are going on now. And you have to kind of excuse my nasal congestion because I've had a little issue with that.
It's okay.
But I'm okay.
We hear you loud and clear.
And we are so happy and pleased to have our special guest with us today. and the United States president of the CCHR.
That's right. And the number to call in, as always, from anywhere around the world, 1-323-522-5482. 1-323-522-5482. And you want to go ahead and go
yes,
to...
because we are live. So what we're going to do is go to a break, and then we're going to come back, and we're going to introduce you to our special guest. And we say he is the United States president on the Citizens Commission on Human Rights, because it is an international organization.
That's right.
So let's go ahead and take a break, and then we'll be back, and we're going to introduce you to our special guest, and we're going to discuss the psychiatric drugging of the military, the hidden enemy.
That's right. Don't you go nowhere.
This edition of Aim to Purpose, the radio show, is brought to you by L. Hicks Consulting Services. When you want the best in business coaching, life coaching, or perhaps your organization, business, or company is in need of a dynamic speaker for an upcoming workshop or seminar, contact Louise Hicks for L. Hicks Consulting Services at 1-562-310-1495. From anywhere around the world, that's 1-562-310-1495. For more information about Louise Hicks and her consulting services, visit her website at www.louisehicks.biz. Again, that's www.louisehicks.biz. Or call 1-562-310-1495. L. Hicks Consulting Services, where professionalism is top priority.
Hello, world, again. We are back again. I'm Louise Hicks, your host of Aim to Purpose, the radio show, along with my co-host and son, Kennon Wesley Mason. And we're here with our special guest today as we went to the break, Mr. Bruce Wiseman, the U.S. President of the Citizens Commission on Human Rights. And we're going to go ahead and introduce our special guest to you now, but we're going to share a little bit about Mr. Wiseman.
That's right. Bruce Wiseman is the U.S. President of the Citizens Commission on Human Rights. He has testified before bodies of both houses of the United States Congress, as well as state legislative and judicial bodies in Colorado, Arkansas, New Jersey, Tennessee, Pennsylvania, and Florida. He has also testified before the Food and Drug Administration, the President's Commission on Mental Health, the President's Commission to Reform Special Education, and the National Institution of Mental Health Census Conference on ADHD. He has made more than 800 radio and television appearances, including CNN, Fox National News, NBC's Dateline, and The Montel Williams Show, and has been quoted in print media across the country, including the New York Times. He has a master's degree, summa cum laude, in American history from the California State University at San Jose, and is the former chairman of the Department of History of John F. Kennedy University. Mr. Wiseman is the author of the compelling book Psychiatry, The Ultimate Betrayal, and for 5 years hosted the acclaimed nationally syndicated radio show Take America Back. So, and really quick, here is the book here, Psychiatry, The Ultimate Betrayal. This is my personal copy right here. A wonderful book. And with that being said, let's give a wonderful, warm welcome, special Aim to Purpose welcome to our special guest, Mr. Bruce Wiseman.
Thank you. Thank you, Bruce, for coming in to join us. Do you mind if I call you Bruce? Thank you so much.
Of course not. Thanks so much for having me, Louise.
Okay, great. This show is just so special, as I mentioned earlier, because I watched this documentary, which is what inspired this show, The Hidden Enemy. And Bruce, tell us give us some, you saw the clip from the beginning of the hour, and this is a 27-minute documentary. However, it's an hour and a half, I believe, because I haven't seen the entire, but I saw the 27 minutes that you presented, I believe. Is it on Capitol Hill?
Yes.
Tell us a little bit about that and what inspired you to take this documentary And when did it come out, the documentary?
The documentary was released a couple of years ago. It's now won, at least at last count, 7 different video awards. So we're very, very, very proud of it.
Yes.
It exposes, as you both have said, one of the most egregious tragedies in the history of American life, which is the psychiatric drugging of our men and women in uniform.
Yes.
Louise, as you mentioned, the statistic, 22 vets killing themselves every day. Every day. I mean, I say this to people, and you can't really get your head around that figure.
That's right.
It's mind-numbing.
It is.
And the truth of the matter is, one doesn't have to go look very far to find the cause of this, because a staggering number of veterans as well as active duty military are prescribed psychotropic drugs, particularly antidepressant drugs, drugs which have dozens of international drug regulatory warnings tying the drugs to suicide. Studies throughout the planet, across the planet, including the FDA and countries around the world, tie these drugs to suicide and in some cases homicide. So we have statistics, for instance, that between 2005 and 2011 there was a 696% increase in the amount of drugs going in, psychotropic drugs, psychiatric drugs going into the military. And when you look at a graph of the suicides of the military, it is a parallel, straight-up graph, almost straight up. I mean, the graphs are going like this. So the cause and effect is obvious. The literature makes it very clear that these drugs are tied to acts of suicide, violence, mania, psychosis. So we stand here today. The former Secretary of Defense, Leon Panetta, called this an epidemic, meaning the suicides in the military, and so it is. And so, to long-winded answer to your question, Louise, to expose this and to target the right source of this problem, which are psychiatrists slapping labels on these warriors and these heroes and then putting them on toxic chemicals. We produced the video. And as you noted, I had the pleasure and honor of screening the video in the Veterans Affairs Committee room in Congress to dozens and dozens and dozens of congressional staff, the standing room only. We were the information on the one hand is powerful, on the other hand it is eye-opening, and hearings have been held, and more hearings are to be held by the Veterans Affairs Committee on the psychiatric drugging in the military.
And it's stressful, it's distressing, it's shocking. I had being married to 2 military guys, one now deceased, I had no idea that we had this many veterans committing suicide daily, and also not just committing suicide, there's some dying. They call it, can you talk about that a little, sudden death, I believe?
Well, there's different classes of psychiatric drugs. The antidepressants are tied very clearly to suicide. Another class of the drugs, antipsychotic drugs, it's just another class of different molecules, are causing sudden death. These soldiers and veterans, active duty, take these drugs and they have some kind of extremely adverse reaction to the cardiovascular system. They die in their sleep. So these folks, I call them youngsters. I mean, young men and women take these pills and they don't wake up in the morning. And so the soldiers, as well as the vets, but I think it's more active duty, have taken to calling this drug the main psychotropic drug that's given. The brand name is Seroquel. They call it Seroquel.
Yes.
Because that's exactly
what it is.
What it is and what it does.
And it is what it is. And I'm glad you brought that drug up because, as I mentioned at the top of the hour, too, about my son, David, who inspired my award-winning book, he was on Seroquel.
Yeah.
The drug known with the name as Seroquel, but they have given it a very, I think, appropriate name, Seroquel, because of what's going on. Now, when you went before Congress and you shared with them this video, in which we hope that this documentary, that everyone goes out and watch it, and I think you can watch it on the internet as well. We'll share some information about that. What did Congress have to say? I'm curious, and what are they doing about it?
Well, it's a good question, and let me just pick up the point that you made there. Folks can go to cchr.org/vets, cchr.org/vets, and they can watch the DVD in its entirety. And there are a number of articles on that site as well about the psychiatric drugging in the military. So I would encourage any of your listeners who themselves are veterans or active duty military or have friends or family that are in the service, I would encourage them to watch it so at least they're informed and they can make informed decisions. To answer your question now, the audience that watched the screening of the DVD, and it was an edited version, as you noted,
right.
They were glued. They were glued to the presentation. They were taking notes. They were just locked onto that information. Subsequently, one of the executives of the Veterans Affairs Committee came up to me and just thanked us profusely for the research that we had come up with, and the production of the video was very, very, very grateful.
Yeah.
This wasn't a political PR talk. This was a sincere thanks. And hearings were just, to get back to what got done about it, hearings were just held, Louise, it was a couple of weeks ago, on this subject, on the psychiatric drug in the military, and further hearings were announced to be held, and hopefully something concrete will come out of that committee, go to the floor of the House and through to the Senate, so that at least these folks have informed consent. And when the when the psychiatrist goes, take this drug, take this antidepressant, you're depressed, that at least the soldier, sailor, Air Force person, Marine understands that the drug is tied to suicide, that there are numerous adverse side effects to these drugs.
Oh, yes.
They need to know. Usually these side effects are dismissed out of hand by the psychiatrist, but in fact they are very real, and the fact that, as we talked about, 22 veterans killing themselves every day, that's how real they are.
It's really real. And Ken, did you have something?
Well, I mean, I have a copy here of The Hidden Enemy. I'll just really quickly show a picture of it, so if anyone wants to go and get it. And you can go to cchr.org/vets. Really quick, I just want to read the insert here. It says, "We have never drugged our troops to this extent, and the current increase in suicides is not a coincidence. Why hasn't psychiatry in the military been relieved of command of mental health services? In any other command position in the military, there would have been a change in leadership," and that comes from a lieutenant colonel clinical psychologist in the U.S. Army Reserve. People go into the military for various reasons, and but I highly doubt that they think that they would have this kind of treatment done onto them once they do their active duty protecting the country, and then when they come home after seeing what they see, comrades being either shot or killed, and then they're depressed about it. They go to their psychiatrist, and the first thing they do, and I've watched this in its entirety, the psychiatrists, some of the military vets have even said that before they even start talking, that the psychiatrist will diagnose them with depression or schizophrenia or whatever, what have you, and they will give them prescriptions for the Seroquel, the Cymbaltas, the Zolofts, and any other psych drug that alters the human mind.
The quote, Ken, that you just read is from, as you noted, Lieutenant Colonel Bart Billings.
Right. I was going to say something about him.
And I wanted to make the point, and you were just making it. You know, these young men and women come home from combat. Clearly, in many cases, that's a disturbing experience, can be a disturbing experience. Nobody's saying that's not disturbing. Colonel Billings has an entire program where he helps veterans readjust back into society without the use of psychotropic drugs.
Right. And it can be done.
Yes.
It can be done. No person needs, if you will, to be on any drug to get themselves back into society. Or at least that's my opinion. I think that people can get back into society and be able to tell their stories of their military experience without the backlash, if you will, of these memories that go on forever. My mom was married to 2 military vets, and as a child growing up, I got to see, now that I'm older, it kind of clicks now, I got to see the effects that military duty has on the individual. I got to see it up close and personal.
I got to live it.
And we got to live it, yes.
It's amazing. Yeah, we got to live it. And as you mentioned, Bruce, about Lieutenant Colonel, is he a Lieutenant Colonel?
Yes.
Bart? That's
Bart
B-O-R-T. Is it B-A-R-T?
Bart,
B-O?
yeah.
Yes.
Okay,
Bart
Billings.
Yeah.
And he made an interesting statement because I've watched some of his videos also. Like I said, this is very interesting to me because of my situation, what I've dealt with. And he said that when these psychiatrists are diagnosing these veterans, they are quick to give them these psychotropic drugs when it's a normal reaction to being in an abnormal environment.
Yeah.
Well,
that makes sense.
Yeah.
Another quote by Colonel Billings, and I'm quoting him here. "I've been trying to convince people that psychiatrists are nothing but legal drug pushers," he says.
Yes.
And they're dealing drugs that don't work and actually kill people. And this man's a PhD in psychology and served in the military in that capacity for 30 years. So this is a guy that knows of what he speaks.
Yes, he does. And I've heard him speak, and he speaks truth. Now, Bruce, and he also talked about an integrative medical approach. Why do you think that, since I did some other research, and this started back in the 1940s with someone by the name of Lieutenant Reese, Colonel, Brigadier General, let me make sure I get
John R. Reese, yeah.
Reese, right, back in the 1940s.
Yeah.
And he was a military guy, and more of this drug pushing started, and since then it appears it has escalated. We're now spending over $300 billion of dollars because of the greed and the profit and the psychiatric industry and their allies being the manufacturers of these drugs, and many corrupt politicians they've joined the gang here. And as you said, Colonel Billings said, they're drug pushers. So why do you think now, Bruce, there's more light being shed on this, and people are becoming, the public, the masses are becoming more conscious about it?
Well, a couple things. One, for your listeners, they can do some research on J.R. Reese, who was head of the World Federation of Mental Health, who basically opened the doors to using the military as experimental publics, basically guinea pigs, for psychotropic drugs and programs.
Yes.
Relative to why is there more awareness being put on this now? I think the answer to that is the amount of abuse has escalated, and it's continued to go up. I'm modesty aside, I'm proud to say I think we've had a certain amount to do with that. The Citizens Commission on Human Rights, who
absolutely
investigates and exposes psychiatric abuse, but the public is becoming aware that these molecules kill. Mm-hmm. And not the subject of our show today, but as I think you folks know or may know, virtually every school shooter where we've been able to find the information, these kids have been on psychiatric drugs. Again, these are drugs. Yeah. So why? And this information is known by the psychiatrist. The drugs are tied to mania, to psychosis, to suicide, in some cases to homicide, and yet 9 out of 10 children that go and see a psychiatrist are given a psychotropic drug. We spend billions of dollars a year on a war on drugs in this country, and kids line up in the halls of their schools to get a fix of Kitty Coke. Ritalin and drugs of that nature are essentially cocaine. They're in the same class of drugs as morphine, opium, and cocaine.
That's right.
So to go back to your point, Ken, children don't need a toxic molecule to learn to read.
Yeah. No, they don't.
Yeah. Maybe their parents sent them to school with a half a dozen donuts under their belt. Maybe they haven't learned to read. Maybe they're disciplined, but they don't need toxins in their brain.
Yeah.
And that's a major problem. And I want to share this with you because I've talked about this on the radio show. When David, my son, was diagnosed with the cancer, he was 14. My daughter was 6 years old in a Christian school, a private school. The teachers were diagnosing her with ADHD, and for those of you that don't know that, that's attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. That's a name that the psychiatrists have come up with, some false name, and it's just crazy what they're doing. And if I had listened to the teachers, my daughter, who's 26 today, would have been a Ritalin baby. And it was no way that I was going to put my daughter, having a degree in social work. I went, because I have a bachelor's in social work, I went and did some research myself. And when I found out about this Ritalin and what it does to these kids, it zombifies these kids. I told the school, no way my daughter will go to this school if you think I'm going to put her on Ritalin. I will put her in a public school as opposed to letting her go to this quote-unquote Christian school. And they want to put her on kitty cocaine. And I told them no. Today my daughter is a thriving businesswoman. She's never been on this stuff, and thank God I had the sense enough to do my own research. And these military kids are also being drugged. Can you address that too, Bruce? Because in the documentary, or either I've read it somewhere on the internet or heard it on one of the documentaries, they are also drugging the military children.
Sure, it's like dominoes. Here's what happens: the mom or dad, the service person, is slapped with the label. They're put on the drug. Those drugs cause violence. They cause, as I said, mania. In some cases, suicide. But violence and aggression is definitely a side effect. So they come home. They get combative with their spouses, which is not the way things used to be. This disturbs the child.
Right.
The child is now taken in to see the psychiatrist. The psychiatrist says the child's got conduct disorder or obsessive compulsive disorder or ADHD or bipolar disorder. These are all labels, ladies and gentlemen.
Yes.
They're labels. There's no science to any psychiatric diagnosis. There's no blood tests. There's no CAT scans. There's no X-rays. There's no urinalysis. These are nothing but labels by 21st century witch doctors.
Yeah, you can't find depression in a urine sample.
That's right.
You can't find manic depression or schizophrenia in a blood test. And just like you mentioned about all the shootings that have been happening since I think Columbine, which was back in 1999. Since then, we've had Virginia Tech, we've had Fort Hood, and the Batman shooting, and all of them have had psychotropic drug ties.
As well, Ken, as this pilot who flew 150 people into a mountain in Europe, he's on antidepressants.
Yes, he was. So it's just gotten out of hand here. And you mentioned earlier, Bruce, about the violence that it creates. And I just heard today that the jury was in with James Holmes, the one that shot in Colorado, shot up all these people. I think he may have killed a dozen people or so and wounded several others in this theater. It had to do with the Batman movie, I believe, or something.
Yep.
And now they're trying to decide whether to give him the death penalty, and accordingly, the district attorneys, from what the news media, I'm quoting the news media, and I'm paraphrasing, said something to the effect that the district attorney said that mental illness is no excuse to go out and kill somebody. Now, and according to what I've read also, James Holmes was under psychiatric care by a psychiatrist at the University, I believe, of Colorado, if I'm naming the correct university, in June, just prior to him doing these acts in July of 2012. So, I mean, what does that tell you? And I can attest to this by my son, a civilian, and I don't know whether James Holmes has ever been in the military or not, but my son being a civilian, he just got out of the hospital, Harbor UCLA County Medical Center. The taxpayers, we are paying for these psychiatrists to drug these people and keep sending them out in the streets, come back in and drug them again. He was in the hospital Monday. I got a call from the hospital, Harbor UCLA Medical Center County, where I worked for 32 years with the county, so I know how they operate. And the next day, Tuesday, this was Monday, July 27th, the next day, Tuesday, I'm sure they had drugged him. He was back out again. And then this Saturday, I had 3 or 4 police cars at my house, Downey, California, because of my son. And more than likely, he was probably drugged in the hospital, coming down on the drugs. Neighbors called because of suspicious behavior from him. And here I am stuck in a catch-22 position because of the laws.
Yeah, it's a double-edged sword.
It's a double-edged sword. So the military, we are suffering as civilians just like the military. And Congress has been working on this for years. Now, I have this article that Ken read earlier, Bruce, from CNN. CNN.com,
yep.
I believe.
Yep.
And apparently, John Walsh, who is a Democrat from Montana, had, they said last month, but I think this was released, this article, back in 2014, March or April of 2014. And this is what he has to say. He says, I think we do a pretty good job of taking that citizen soldier and making a warrior out of him, but we aren't doing a very good job of taking that warrior and reintegrating him back into society, Walsh said. And, I mean, this is sad. It's just, these people are speaking as if the military just happened. This is 2014. And now we got 22 veterans committing suicide daily. This started in the 1940s.
Actually, it started before then. This has been going on since what, World War I?
It started before then, but we talked about Reese, I should say, in 1940s when I guess he went and got the psychiatric industry, started experimenting. And if anyone would go, if you live in Los Angeles, go to the Psychiatry Museum of Death. It's in Los Angeles. And you will get a better history, historical facts on why all of this is happening. So why is it they're addressing this, but it seems they aren't doing anything?
It's one of the most massive, evil public relation campaigns in the history of the planet. They have hoodwinked, and I say they, I'm talking about the psychiatric industry, have hoodwinked the society, Congress, educators, that they know what they're doing. We talked before the show that you had Jeffrey Shaler on, and he probably talked about psychiatry's billing Bible, the DSM.
Yes.
Which is it stands for the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual. Now, I bring that up for this reason, that the introduction to this book, which is about 1,000-page book that's got 374 or more diagnoses in it, the introduction says, written by the American Psychiatric Association, they don't actually know what a mental disorder is. They don't know the difference between one mental disorder and another mental disorder. They don't know the difference between one mental disorder and no mental disorder. So the introduction to the book that's got 374 mental disorders says they don't know what one is. And the fact of the matter is psychiatrists don't have a clue.
Right.
They don't know what the mind is. You go in and see a psychiatrist, you're given a toxic pill. The pharmaceutical industry, the incestuous relationship between pharma and the psychiatric industry has brought, not to sound too conspiratorial, but a curtain of evil into our schools, into our courts, into our legislatures, and clearly, as we have been talking about for the show here, into the military.
Yeah.
And they throw these labels on behavior that the psychiatrist doesn't like. Little Johnny's precocious. He's running around the room. The psychiatrist doesn't like that. He's got ADHD.
Yeah.
He's hyperactive. Drug him. They don't have any solutions except toxic pills or shock. Most people think shock treatment went out with cuckoo's nest. 100,000 people a year get electroshocked in this country.
Yes.
Generates $5 billion a year to the psychiatric industry. A 5-year-old knows not to put his finger in a light socket. Psychiatrists will run hundreds of volts of electricity through someone's brain and call it therapy. These people, frankly, and to be really blunt about it, are criminals.
That's right. Yeah. And you mentioned the molecule aspect of this. I mean, these are chemical molecules that alter the way the human brain functions naturally. It alters the way the brain functions in such a divine way that it alters the thinking capacity, it alters the emotional capacity. Because every time that a mental illness is diagnosed, it's about suppressing the emotional aspect of the human being. Depression, schizophrenia, all these things. It's about suppressing the emotional aspect, which is the reason why people become what you say human zombies, because they have no emotions anymore. The drugs have taken over so much that you can't just stop taking them cold turkey, because if you do, the effects could be worse than what they are when you're actually on the drug.
Yeah, no question about it. Anybody looking to withdraw from a psychiatric drug should do so under the care of a non-psychiatric medical doctor.
Right.
Because you're 1,000% correct, Ken. And the bottom line is most psychiatric drugs cause brain damage.
Yeah.
They cause brain damage. So there is a pretense that the psychiatric industry had this PR line for some time, which we finally got them to admit was false. Oh, that there's a chemical imbalance. No, there's no such thing as a chemical imbalance.
Right.
Yeah.
But they had this PR line and go, well, Johnny's got a chemical imbalance. He needs Ritalin to balance his brain chemicals. That happens to be a lie. Yeah. It's just a lie.
It is, and I having gone through it with family members, I can attest, and I'm glad you said withdraw under a non-psychiatric doctor.
Right.
That's who you need to withdraw under. And you mentioned something else that I want to touch on, but before we do, I want to go to a break, but I want to talk about the informed consent that you elaborate a little bit more, and I also want to talk about the PTSD. When we come back. So let's take a break and we'll be right back.
Hello, world. Hey, it's the 1-year anniversary of Aim to Purpose, the radio show. So first, we thank the staff at Global Voice Broadcasting for the platform and the opportunity. Go to gvbstudios.com/show/A2P. Next, we thank our wonderful guests that have graced the airwaves of Aim to Purpose over the past year, like Dr. Caldwell B. Esselstyn from the documentary Forks Over Knives, Nazir Alim Bey with his soon-to-be-released documentary entitled Melanin, the God Particle, from the Citizens Commission on Human Rights, Dr. Jeffrey A. Shaler, and Professor Baron K. Brown, who's become a regular on the show. Internationally, we've had guests such as Bridget Nkuna and Sarah Jane Farrell from South Africa, award-winning author F.T. Camargo from Brazil, Brenda Pierce, the Empowered Nurse from Canada, double Olympic medalist from the British cycling team Brian Steele, and many other great guests that have openly shared their knowledge, humor, wit, and wisdom with the A2P universe. And most important, we thank you, the listening and viewing audience, for tuning in each and every Monday. Information is power, And the more our audience grows, the more open minds that'll receive the information, which makes all of us powerful. So we encourage all of you to spread the word about Aim to Purpose, the radio show. Lastly, if you know someone with a product, business, or foundation that's interested in advertising as a sponsor for the show, contact A2P host Louise Hicks at louisehicks.biz or Shamika Brown at divinebrownmedia.com. Be a part of the A2P movement, as there is always power in numbers of like minds that multiply. And follow us on social media at Aim to Purpose, #A2P. Once again, thank you all from Aim to Purpose, the radio show.
Hello world again. We are back with you, and just before the break we were talking about we want to talk a little bit more about the informed consent, as well as PTSD, the post-traumatic stress disorder, which is really not a disorder, and we'll talk about that. And we also will talk on the matter of schools taking, we're going to talk about a little bit of the spiritual aspect. Like I said, this is Aim to Purpose, the radio show, and we are about real talk, real people, real purpose.
We don't sugarcoat anything.
No, we don't, because we are about aspiration, inspiration, motivation, edification, and determination. We want to empower people to understand and empower the masses so that we can overcome some of the crises that we're encountering here in America.
Yeah.
And Bruce, you mentioned informed consent. Exactly what is that?
Well, it's a matter of giving somebody that is going to get some kind of medical treatment or medicine sufficient educational information that they can make an honest decision. People, when they're prescribed, in many cases, prescribed psychotropic drugs, psychiatric drugs, are not given informed consent. They're not told that, the number of people that have committed suicide taking Zoloft, or the number of children that have run through schools with AK-47s on other mind-altering drugs. Mm-hmm. So it's a matter of informing people honestly, not with a conflict of interest. And so that's what informed consent is. The person needs to understand. And you don't have the psychiatrist, to repeat, telling the proposed recipient of the drug the full panoply, to use Ken's words, of side effects that can occur from these drugs. So informed consent is, so if somebody consents to take it, they have been informed fully and honestly.
And they don't do that. We know that, because I know when my kids got vaccines and shots, I wasn't told anything, but they need their MMR. I think that's how they say it, the MM.
You just need to take it.
Yeah, you just take it. And even a doctor, Dr. Snyderman, was on Dr. Oz or Good Morning America telling me, just take your damn shots. Can you imagine a doctor just shoving something down your throat like that? And we are talking about, excuse me, the drugging of the military, the hidden enemy, because this documentary was produced and it's entitled The Hidden Enemy. It's about the military, and it's shocking. And Bruce has brought so much to our attention here, and we want to talk about the PTSD. Like I said, I was married to 2 veterans, and they both were diagnosed. I would say they would be diagnosed with the post-traumatic stress. I don't know about the disorder, because as Bruce has so eloquently explained about the DSM, did I say it right?
Yes.
The DSM, where these psychiatrists I could do what they're doing. Just write in here some diagnosis.
Yes,
I'll see you and write an opinion about you and what's going on with you. And the next thing you know, I don't have a bottle of Seroquel right now, but here, take this. And that's what is happening. So tell us about the PTSD, because I know they talk about this in the documentary.
Well, PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder, is a psychiatric label that the psychiatrist came up with. I think it was in 1980. Now, it's important to distinguish a couple of things. We mentioned earlier, Ken mentioned and I mentioned, folks come back from a war zone. It is natural that things can be unsettling. And so psychiatrists take what is a natural response to the horrors of war, throw a psychiatric label on it, and drug it. as opposed to, as we were talking earlier, somebody like Colonel Billings providing a facility for veterans to come back. And if they're experiencing some trouble, he's got a whole program that deals with that without the drugs. So, PTSD, you have a tremendous number of people that have that label that are given drugs that haven't even seen combat. They haven't been deployed.
Right.
So this shows you that it's a drug-pushing agenda, which is not to say that returning military folks don't have problems. The wrong solution is to drug it. That's the point.
Yeah. To me, it's amazing that we do have the quote war on drugs, on illegal drugs, the cocaine, the heroin, but there is no such thing as a war on the legal drugs, the Seroquel, the Cymbalta, the Paxils, you name it, Wellbutrin, the list goes on and on and on. And they're not only being given to the military, but just your average person. I've known people personally that have taken Abilify or Ambien because they can't sleep at night, and they've never seen any military. They've never joined the military. Right. They just can't sleep. So here you go with this drug called Ambien, which has a number of quote side effects. I don't even call them side effects. I call them the initial effects.
And that is true. Ambien has many. I had some issues with my job being encountered with a mold environment, and that's what they gave me. I took one day, and those things, me never using drugs before, very few prescription drugs in my lifetime, and no illegal drugs, and I took it, and I told the doctor, no, I'm not taking this anymore. This stuff it was horrifying to me. And I said, no, I'm not taking it. I took my health care in my own hands. And you're right about this, Bruce, when you said it, and about how they put labels on everything. And Mr. Colonel, I should say, Billings talked about that, how these people, and you and Ken both touch on it, get away with this. If they were in a corporation, they'd be fired. Yeah. Like Xerox, IBM, any of them, they'd be fired.
Yeah.
But it doesn't happen here.
Yeah, you have a tremendous amount of money in the psychopharmaceutical complex. The pharmaceutical industry generates a little over $1/3 trillion with a T, dollars in income. They buy big, huge PR firms. There are about 1,100 pharmaceutical lobbyists in Washington. They spend, depends on whose figures you read, but the last one I read, $240 million a year lobbying. Wow. That's $250 million a year lobbying. We're not talking about campaign contributions. We're talking about lobbying.
Right.
So there's a lot of money there, and the answer, the weapon that they don't have is the truth.
Yeah.
That's it. And the truth will set you free. And we have a couple of minutes left. Can you touch on the spiritual aspect of this, Bruce?
We talked during the break quickly, and I did want to bring it up because I think it's very important. You talked about the Christian school where they wanted to put your daughter on a psychiatric
Ritalin.
For thousands and thousands of years, if someone had spiritual travail of some kind or another, they would talk to either a friend or a loved one or a priest or a rabbi or a minister of some kind. Now we find that religion refers people that have spiritual travail to psychiatrists.
Right.
Dear Lord, that is the wrong avenue. It's the wrong road. They're the wrong people. There are answers to problems, and psychiatrists do not have them. They will exacerbate in the hands of a psychiatrist.
Yes, they do. And when you spoke on religion, I have found that religion and politics are the two most divisive establishments in the world. And with religion becoming what it has become today, I'm skeptical because it has become a business. It's also a multi-billion-dollar business.
Oh, yeah.
And you wonder about that. It seems to be some correlation here and some collusion here. So it makes you wonder.
Well, there's always, you hear about the lawsuits. against pharmaceutical companies. I think Pfizer had a $3 billion settlement in a class action lawsuit. Is it the best thing to go after the pharmaceutical manufacturer, such as a Pfizer or Merck or Baxter or any of these other companies, or would it be better to go after the individuals within those companies that give the okay to distribute these drugs?
I would do that, Ken, but I would take it one step further and go to the real basic on the matter, and that's the psychiatrist that comes up with the label in the first place, manufactures this label, and then pharma comes along and goes, okay, good, here's a drug for it. Mm-hmm. It's the psychiatrist that makes up these diagnoses. So when you've experienced some kind of problem like that, look at suing the psychiatrist, and your attorney would be able to tell you if there's a case against the pharmaceutical company as well. But these psychiatrists, the peer review literature is full of information about the side effects of these drugs, the suicide-inducing effects of these drugs. So if the psychiatrist is giving the drug to whomever and they commit suicide, I would target the psychiatrist and the pharmaceutical company.
Yeah.
And the government. We cannot leave our government out because of the laws. That's where I have a problem. I'm caught in a catch-22. They create these laws. And as you mentioned, all these lobbyists is up there. You wonder who's in whose pocket. Because our lawmakers have to be held accountable and responsible for what they're doing as well. Yeah. And you can't even talk to many of them. I've been trying to get a meeting with my supervisor in my district here in California, and they were supposed to meet with me last month. They're not returning my emails. I wonder why. So we got to hold our politicians accountable as well.
Yes, we do. It's our government. The truth is, we can't complain about them because we put them there.
That's
right. Absolutely.
Yeah. So you have to hold
their a mouthful there.
Hold their feet to the fire, Louise.
Because they have become career politicians, and until we start voting them out, here comes 2016. I'm a little bit off the subject, but it goes to the subject because this was presented to Capitol Hill from the hidden enemy. And please go to the website, and we're going to let Bruce have some final thoughts here, and we're going to wrap it up.
Yep.
Well, I would simply encourage folks, let me go back to the point that I just made. If you have been damaged or abused by a psychiatrist, talk to an attorney. You can also call us at CCHR. You can go to cchr.org, and we have abuse forms that you can fill out. We are the world's premier psychiatric watchdog. And if you've been abused by a psychiatrist, you let us know. Mm-hmm. They don't want to mess with us.
No, they don't.
They do not want to mess with us. And we will continue to clean up, investigate and clean up the field of mental health. It's what we do.
Yeah.
And we're there to help anybody that's been abused by the mental health industry.
Oh, yeah.
And the mental health industry is in crisis here in California, big time. And because of the laws. And let's show Bruce's book one more time.
Oh, yeah. It's called Psychiatry, The Ultimate Betrayal. And we have a picture of it right here. Let's get there we go. Close up right there.
There we go. Psychiatry, The Ultimate Betrayal by Bruce Wiseman, our in-studio guest today.
Yes.
Where we are talked about the psychiatric drugging of the military, the hidden enemy. And by all means, go to the website he gave earlier, cchr.org/vets, and you can see this documentary in its entirety.
Yes, and we want to thank Bruce Wiseman for being our special guest, taking his coat off, getting everything ready to go, and giving us all the great information. I want to read the back of about the back of the book, the insert here. It says, our cities didn't become lawless battlegrounds ruled by criminal gangs without a reason, nor did drugs travel by themselves from the streets to our grade schools. There have to be reasons why today's high school graduate can't read or find his own city on the map, or why teenage pregnancies are at an all-time high, why divorces continue to mount and families shatter, why feeling good is better than doing good, and why morality is considered out of date. None of it just happened. Earlier this century, the world took a wrong turn, and since then, something has been eating at the foundation of our culture. This something has infiltrated every aspect of our lives, our schools, our courts, our homes, without most of us even knowing it. It has been staring us in the face, and we haven't seen it. If you want to hide something from the masses, the best thing to do is to put it in plain view. So we want to thank Bruce Wiseman for being our special guest once again, and we do invite you to come back in the near future, if you will, sir.
Do.
Thanks so much for having me, guys.
Yes,
Thank
absolutely.
you. And with that being said, always remember, your power lies within you. Let it loose. Until next week.
Yes.